It all got started when the rain fall down, and the day looked to be doom and gloom. All of those ready for the concert yelled, "Gimme shelter!" Then the organizers said, "On with the show." Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. All right, those were all the titles of songs, and at least 50,000 fans braved the rain in Halifax to see the Rolling Stones play the largest rock concert in the city's history. This day in weather history. So for those train spotters out there, names of the songs were Rainfall Down, Doom and Gloom, Gimme Shelter, On with the Show. And you know there's going to be a few more peppered throughout the rest of this episode of the podcast. Man, who doesn't love an outdoor festival? I've been to dozens in my time, and I will admit that they can get downright messy and annoying when you're in a driving rain. This record-breaking concert came at a peak time in Halifax's tourism at the time. There were already 4 massive cruise ships docked in their harbor on what they call their fall foliage voyages. Plus, there was an NHL preseason game being played in the city. Then you bring the Rolling Stones to town on top of all that. Where are all of these people going to go in between? Well, to start, bars were granted special accommodations to stay open until 4:30 in the morning. That's almost that's the sun's coming up at that time. That was to take care of the 50,000 concert revelers. But although the legendary Rolling Stones headlined the music festival held in Halifax Commons, this lineup also featured performances by hometown heroes Sloan, as well as the incomparable Alice Cooper and controversial Kanye West. He was probably thrown in so the kids under the age of 40 had someone to relate to. But the rain, it started early. First, as a light rainfall, while thousands were very slowly being guided through the security and onto the massive grounds of the famed inner city park. The rain continued to fall as Sloan opened up the festival. They were the first up, but the field just kept filling up with fans. Next was Alice Cooper. He was not as fortunate as the rest of the lineup. For his early evening performance, which is normally of the very theatrical type if you've ever seen him in concert, the skies opened wide, soaking the band and, hey look, before I say it, I said he was theatrical. Soaking the band and a live python that joined Cooper on stage for one of his songs. Yikes! By the time Kanye took his turn on stage, the rain was starting to ease, and then it was lighter again, just as Mick Jagger and the band took their turn on stage. Welcome to year 2 of this podcast. Right now, you're listening to the full version of today's story on your favorite podcast provider. But there's also the daily podcast video short. They're shot right here in my podcast recording studio, so you get that perspective. But oftentimes, they will include visuals from that day's event from when it happened in weather history. So after listening to the full story, go check out the podcast video short on television or online anytime at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. The problem with rain and miles and miles and miles and miles of cable and technology is that they don't mix well. As for the Stones, there were many technical problems early on in their show, no doubt caused by the wet weather. It seemed to get the better of Keith Richards, again, as he does have, let's be honest, the heaviest lifting musically. And at one point he was shaking his fist in anger, and it was unclear, however, as to whether it was directed at the stage tech or the gods of rain. Ronnie Wood looked to have a fabulous time with it all, and the recently late Charlie Watts on drums was as solid as ever. As for their knighted frontman, Sir Mick was at his amazing best as always in spite of the severe weather. He braved it like it was nothing. They played a full 27-song set, a literal sonic attack for all the fans who braved the elements for their rock and roll heroes. Then they came back for a 1-song encore, and they only needed 1 song. You see, after the day everyone had and the enthusiasm through that massive set list of music, not one person left the grounds afterwards thinking, I can't get no satisfaction. The event was perfect. See, I told you I'd get at least one more song reference in there. Oh, back to Canada's rock band Sloan, who are, in fact, originally from Halifax. You hear those stories of bands who years after they've retired, they can sit back and say, remember when we opened up for... Well, to say that you opened up for the Rolling Stones is right at the top of any rock band's list. But Sloan, on this day, that was their third time opening for the band, who back in the 60s was the only band to directly compete with the Beatles for fans. That is some amazing feat. In the rain, in Halifax, and it was on this day in weather history. Tomorrow is September 24th, and for this one, we not only go back to the 19th century, but we're also going out to the furthest reaches of our solar system. It was here when German astronomer Johann Gottfried discovered the planet Neptune while at the Berlin Observatory. It's on this day in weather history with me, your host, Chris May.